It is not AI that will kill you, it's a guy who knows AI who will kill you. AI is not the technology, it is not just the future of technology, it's the technology of today that will change your future.
Piyush Goyal said that we need to do more, research-oriented, deeper use cases.
Get out of this mindset of just trying to bring in operational efficiency or productivity and focus on new technologies and capabilities, whether it's in deep tech or whether it's in deploying patient capital for the VC ecosystem. I've been around in the field of AI for the last decade, working pretty hands-on.
What would you think in today's setup are the skills that a founder needs?
I think it's probably the top three, in my opinion, is
Hello, welcome to this episode of Product Talk with Malti. In today's episode, I'm super happy to bring on Naveen to this episode. Naveen is definitely a very, very popular name. He has worked in the past Flipkart, eBay, PayU, Rakuten, and he's a very somebody who comes with a very strong product thinking mindset and a very rich product experience. Now, for the last few years, Naveen has been building LiquidMind.ai, which is basically solving some complex problems in the trade documentation space and workflow automation using AI agents and Agentic AI. Yeah, he's also creating awareness around building agents through his initiative SkillAgents.ai, and on top of that, he's also building some spiritual knowledge tool called MadhavaGPT. Not only this, he's a two-time TEDx speaker and has been on Forbes list of top 100 leaders. Now, with so much of richness in his profile and with the knowledge base that he had, we definitely had a blast having a conversation all around AI, AI agents, Indian startup ecosystem, and a lot more. So, what did we talk about in today's conversation? Well, we started with how the evolution of Indian startup ecosystem has been. What are some of the new age skills that the startup founders need to have, roll up their sleeves, and they should practice? We spoke about the controversial statement that Piyush Goyal had made around where the Indian startup founders should focus on, and that had created a lot of point of views. We spoke about that what is the kind of adoption that we are seeing for AI agents in the B2B world. In this context, actually, Naveen spoke about a lot of examples. And last but not the least, we also spoke about how does one measure success of these AI agents. And the best part, I think, how does the role of a PM is going to look like in 2030. So stay tuned and watch out for this episode. And I'm going to sure you're going to have a tons of learning in this. HSB, Harishankar Singhania School of Business, the new global technology-focused business school located in Jaipur. Hey Naveen, so super happy to have you in this episode and ready to get going into it.
thanks, Malti. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. So, Naveen, you are somebody who's been deeply embedded in the Indian startup ecosystem for a very long time, right? You have held leadership positions, you've been a multiple time entrepreneur yourself. How do you think has the startup ecosystem story, decoded, let's say, in the last decade?
Thanks. That's a great question, Malti. So, I think one of the good things about being there in the startup ecosystem for such a long time, in my case, 26 years, out of which the first 15 years were largely spent in the US and European startup ecosystems, and now the last decade and perhaps 13 years now in the Indian startup ecosystem. One pattern that I see play out very clearly is this focus on, there was a huge gold rush, if you will, from the VC and the private equity community. It was unheard of until, say, companies like, say, some of my ex companies, Flipkart, Capillary Technologies, and so on, came to the news and, raised mega funding. Now, one was the whole thing about there are a lot of ingredients for a startup, as you know, to be successful. One is obviously venture capital. You need patient capital for the most part, but you also need sustainable capital. And the VCs and PEs were ready to take a big bite of that India story. And that was primarily focused more on operational efficiency, productivity, getting rid of manual processes, reimagining how, say, for example, commerce is done in, say, retail as a D2C use case, which is how companies like Flipkart or Amazon India, then of course the India arm, with their acquisition of Jungly and so on back in 2014. I remember there was a room in the World Trade Center back in 2014 when the then Amazon India head basically was trying to cobble together a team of product folks. And it was a very small unit. From there to where we are today is a pretty remarkable product story, if you will. So there has been a lot of focus in multiple disciplines as well. One is obviously the product story play out. You had a lot of the engineering talent, which was R&D from GCCs, that was always ruling the roost here in India. But for the first time, ownership and control in terms of product thinking, taking a vision, strategy, execution view came to the fore with this startup ecosystem story as well. So the Flipkarts, the the perhaps Amazon India's, the Mishos of the world, and of course the Ola Ubers and some of the others that followed, the big guys, and then a whole long tail as well that came in. That's operational efficiency, productivity, taking ownership for disciplines like product, marketing, sales, etc. Build in India for India story, if you will. And then a lot of companies like Capillary, which was built in India, and also use the capabilities that they built abroad in, say, Southeast Asia, where we began in my capillary journey back in 2012 through till 2014 played out, and of course USA now. So basically, it's always a question of, do they go east, do they go west? That was also a little bit of that story. So a lot of these nuances. I gave you an example of a D2C play, which was like a Flipkart case, or a capillary play, which was a pure B2C. Hope
Yeah.
this helps.
No, I think you're right, and I think a lot of these different dynamics have played a lot of vital role. As you also said, also kind of very important catalyst from a service thinking mindset to becoming a more product thinking mindset, and kind of strengthening our positioning as a product nation.
Absolutely. And if you look at it, right, a lot of the GCCs, a lot of the service companies, the product manager discipline per se was pretty much unrecognized. That came to the fore somewhere, perhaps the inflection point was somewhere around 2000, I would say 2011, 12, which is when Flipkart really started getting big into the game, acquisition of Myntra and so on. Mukesh Bansal just freshly sold his startup to, he was funded by early venture capitalists like Kalari Capital and so on. Vanikola played a great role for those of us who know her since a long time in that VC story and the contributions their company has made, as with many others like Tiger Global took a huge bet on Flipkart. Um, there were there were there was this whole narrative of ownership end to end, as opposed to just being a shadow product manager or somebody who executes basis the directions that were given by their US bosses. So
Yeah.
that was a very change in narrative, if you will, in ownership, and people delivered. And I think that led on to, now look at it, right? There is this whole thing in the US where there is a PayPal mafia. Similarly, in our India context, there is now a Flipkart mafia,
That's
and
right.
a lot of them, right? The PhonePe founders are ex-Flipkart. My colleagues, I used to work with Rahul Chari, used to work with Samir Nigam, Vishal Gupta. All of these guys are my ex-colleagues. You look at any in the startup story, you look at the Grow founders. Neeraj was my own teammate from the engineering side. So that's kind of how it is. If you were to look at the rest of the Grow founders, Harsh and I joined on the same day in Flipkart. So it's incredible on how a single company can have such order of magnitude impact on the overall ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah. In some way, yes, Flipkart has kind of led the way for Indian startup ecosystem in a lot of different ways.
Correct.
All right, I'm going to now fast forward Naveen to today's phase where we all are in the midst of this AI wave, and you yourself are into the thick of the things, building three different startups from LiquidMind. You're doing SkillAgents.ai. You're doing MadhavaGPT. Would love to hear a little bit. So, what would you think in today's setup are the mindset skills that a founder needs?
It's a great question, actually, and we dwell on this a lot in obviously in skill agents, where we mentor people get upskilled, if you will. As I always like to say in most of my talks, and I don't necessarily believe in the other adage, which is it is not AI that will kill you, it's a guy who knows AI who will kill you. That's not the real meaning, if you will. I'd rather word it differently, and I'd rather say AI is not the technology. It is not just the future of technology. It's the technology of today that will change your future. That's how I look at it.
Hmm.
Now, again, you got to rewind the clock a little bit in this case. I've been around in this field. So, by the way, AI itself in the world is not a new thing.
Correct.
Many people came to recognize the value of what AI can do just because there was a consumer offering called a generative pre-trained transformer algorithm launched by OpenAI. Obviously, the inspiration for that came from the white paper that the Google guys did. Attention is all you need, and then Eliana Sutskever and the rest of them in that team basically built out the capabilities to make it a consumer offering, which kind of caught the eye of the general public. Suddenly, everybody had information available at their fingertips, which was very different from, say, our Google as a verb phenomena. But AI in the world, for the uninitiated, just so all of your listeners also know, has been around in the world for many decades. Coming back to the skill sets that somebody today should actually inculcate, I think it's probably the top three, in my opinion, is get absolutely up to speed with AI models, know the evaluation metrics that are going around with assessing these models and the use cases for which you take the customer view and work backwards as with all of us product thinkers, nothing different, to be a good, say, AI PM in this case. And if it depends on which industry you're applying it to, but what stable stakes is this, right? Whether you're a AI marketing professional who wants to use tools, technologies in AI, work backwards, or you're a HR professional wanting to derive applications coming out of AI in your discipline, or whether you're a AI PM who wants to basically leverage AI in your day-to-day activities. Uh, Although the mechanics might differ, but the knowledge levels of, let's say, knowing LLMs, knowing the tools and technologies, knowing which coding agent has got decent eval metrics, perhaps. Even today, if you ask the best of the best folks out there in the industry today, they will tell you. You ask Sundar Pichai, you ask Satyana Della, they'll probably come back and tell you. I was watching an interview with Sundar Pichai with Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, and I think it was recorded recently, where they are talking about on an average 40% of their perhaps code bases being leveraged heavily or rather influenced by AI coding assistants, co-pilots for the most part, and also proper coding, like say OpenAI acquired Windsurf. You have great coding agents that are available in the form of Cursor, Versal, great tools, technologies that are available out there for myriad use cases. So get absolutely hands-on. It is inexcusable on at least concepts such as wipe coding, if not traditional coding. Traditional in the AI world is mostly Python and knowing which databases to interact, how do you build those interaction touch points, knowing how do you use tools, let's say NA10, which is a very graphical mechanism of how we internally as engineers who have evolved into product people through the course of our last 2.5 decades of our career have been privy to, where it gives you a very dumbed down view. It's actually another form of vibe coding, but it gives you great tech interconnect as well, NA10, etc., or ability make.com and so on. But the ability to interact with these tools efficiently, making sure how productive you get. I'll give an example, Malti. You take an example of PowerPoints. We've all been there, done that. We've all been product people getting clobbered by our bosses saying, "Mere ko abhi PPT chahiye," and we get into this endless loop of trying to put together a storyboard. Them not okay with it. Finally, they get frustrated. To hell with you. I'll just build it myself. So all of this, guess what, has completely vanished. Whether it is companies like Gamma App redefining the landscape with great visualization by ideogram and some of the other image generation capabilities, your
Correct.
GPT-4o, which builds great image processing capability over the last 2 months that they launched, so much so that when they launched, it crashed the servers, right? So, and then the ability to be able to sort of ingrain yourself in that AI first world. So, to again summarize, it would be understand AI for your vertical, know what it means by understanding and working backwards on what tools, what technologies, what language models. Is it large language model? Is it small language model? If it is a very small form factor, then should I require quantization, which is shrinking it in compute and floating point compute in a very sort of shrink wrapped approach, tiny ML, if you will, in this case. And then the tools, because at the end of the day, capabilities, I'll give you an example, Malti. There is a new technology in the world of AI over the last 2 3 months. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of. Your listeners would also have probably come across this, called Model Context Protocol. It's an incredible way of AI large language models to be able to communicate effectively with all the various data sources and repositories, if you will.
Correct.
Much like APIs, except it's a modern form of an API construct where information and the medium of exchange is literally the handshake is real time, and you don't technically get into situations like APIs where suddenly you upgrade an API, it breaks with the people who interacted with the previous version of the API. So there is no deprecation per se. Suddenly there is no situation where the API that you're calling breaks. The request response that you pass to it and the payload you get, suddenly the format changes and suddenly you don't know how to consume it. And these kind of problems are avoided, and there's a lot of control with how LLMs can interact with using MCP, which is much viewed like a USB, if you will, as a standard, if you will, launched by Anthropic's Claude. The concept is so powerful. I would suggest and earnestly request all the listeners as well, right? You please have to definitely make an effort at knowing what's there, eval metrics, knowing what's accurate. Many people think Llama 4 is super accurate. I have played around, compared it with the others. There are so many other great models like coding assistant. Claude 3.5 is still great even though you have Claude 4. Claude 4 is still mind blowing. And then you have Gemini 2.5. You have GPT 4.1 now. You have DeepSeek's reasoning 2 that is coming. So there is so much going on, tools, large language, small language models, and so on. You need to be abreast of tech, just like all of us product practitioners, but also for other disciplines that will use AI. And you have to be at the top of your game. This doesn't mean you have to know coding per se, but you definitely have to know concepts of vibe coding and the ability to interact with these systems in a very human way. And
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
SkillAgents, we do that.
That's like a lot of summary and a lot of things, Naveen. One question here would be: does that mean that the founders also need to be very hands-on, especially those who are leading, let's say, the product side of thing? They also need to be very hands-on in terms of the technology in order to see what any of these tools can really do.
I'm a hands-on product manager for all of my working life. So
Hmm.
that's just me. I'm crazy. But if you were to take the average founder who basically doesn't have very good coding skills but is really good in product business sense, etc., the table stakes requirement today in the world of AI is know vibe coding, know the ability to, like I said earlier, ability to interact and pick and choose what tool, what technology works best for their needs with what model, and which foundational model should they be leveraging, or should they be using newer constructs like retrieval augmented generation if it's dealing with enterprises, or a lot of local data sources which you need to also still mine. 90% of enterprise data, for those of your listeners who don't know, is sitting in PDF form or in some document form, for which there are
Right.
new technologies in our world of AI called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where you can go query, talk to those documents, and so on. So it becomes a question of knowing the basic minimum to be able to interact with this in a very human language form. That's the good news.
Hmm.
That's what vibe coding gives you. But you
Hmm.
still need to be super accurate with your prompting. And there are entire articles taken out by Anthropic Claude where they tell their users, and they take out entire lengthy videos on YouTube. You can ask the listeners to take a look at those YouTube videos as well, where they give details on how prompt engineering should be done, how detailed. So here's the thing, right, Malti? When you basically even put a single query into a GPT 4041 system, sometimes if the query context window exceeds a certain duration length, it will try and break it up, and that is the reason you basically lose context, or rather the LLM loses context. The controversial paper that came out last week by Apple, and a lot of both plus and minus viewpoints that came as a result of it. One of the thought processes, somebody's rejoinder was one of these, right? Basic rejoinder, obviously, far from being highly accurate. But I think it is the concept in LLMs about context window, even coding, for example. You Because it's at the end of the day, large language models understand by in a world of tokens. Input tokens is the number of, on an average, one token roughly equal to one word. Not always the case. Sometimes it could be more than one word, depending on the word. And LLMs, as we all know, is all about predicting the next word. Now it could be multilingual, etc., internationalization, IITian, but that's the thing. You basically have to know setting the right prompts, prompt engineering. All of these LLMs internally, even if your prompt is super complex, it will break it up, it will aggregate it, it will try and form a system prompt and feed it so it feeds you the right answer. Which sort of explains sometimes on when you use, let's say, the production version of a GPT versus you go to say my say Founders Hub and I query the same GPT or the newer version, I need to still train, fine tune, distill. There are new age constructs that come with it, and as founders slash product players, to be able to be abreast of prompt engineering, wipe coding, knowing tools, technologies, LLMs, what to use for which use case, how will it solve their end user job to be done. Some of the first principles don't change,
Hmm.
but the rest of it is really about how tech can come and solve their problems for them. To that extent, they definitely need to get a little more hands on. And that's my personal view. May not be at the level I do, which is get into code and Python and entire LLM sequences and Azure and spending my days, weeks, and also working with my customers on the other end. But knowing fully well on customer pain points and seeing how AI can be that differential.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I want to come back to this part of the prompt engineering. What should be the skills that product managers have a little later? But kind of just going a little bit more deeper on the, the use cases that you spoke about. There was a little question which was, I think, in one of the startup, what was it called, Startup Kumbh, where
Oh,
we had,
yeah.
right, where we had Piyush Goyal.
Startup Mahakumbh. Yeah.
Yeah, Startup Mahakumbh, right? Where he said that what should be the kind of focus on use cases or the problems that the startup founders should be really solving rather than, just solving for the operational part of it. We need to do more, research oriented, deeper use cases. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it has become a little bit of a controversial subject, right? I
Right.
think, see, there are two sides to that story. The one side of that story is it a fact that India has been slow to wake up to the AI game and as a result lost out to China and US big time? Perhaps my personal view is yes. Is there room to catch up? Again, my personal view is yes. We are at such a nascent stage worldwide. Forget about India. Uh, in this whole AI game and the journey, it is much like say the way the World Wide Web was invented, or I wouldn't even equate and draw parallel with say the smartphone revolution. AI is much bigger, by the way. It's going to change the way it's like the industrial revolution, it's like the steam engine, it's like electricity coming in. It is one of those paradigm shifts in the world, if you will.
I
You look
agree.
up that lengthy 154 page whatever Mary Meeker report that comes out, wonderful, we all look forward to it, right? I think I call out similar analogies in my SkillAgents training, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot of that thinking sort of in the first few slides of Mary Meeker's report. Look, it can't be much different. Everybody is going to look at it from first principles, and that's really how you should be looking at AI. Coming back to the Piyush Goyal, the Honorable Minister's comment in the Startup Mahakumbh, the reason I say he had a point, which is obviously something that a lot of the startup founders went up in arms and really created a lot of furore, and maybe for good reason, they're entitled to their view. There was the last 10 years, and if you look at parallel, say 20, 25 years back in China as well, operational efficiency, I've been to China many times on my eBay assignments, etc. I can tell you that they are, in my opinion, at least 20 years ahead of India in a lot of these aspects around say, advancements in AI or in adoption of tech, etc. And obviously, they're a manufacturing nation that no matter what the tariff thing is,
Undisputed there.
it is undisputed. They're the factory of the world. No
Yeah.
matter how we look at it, we still have a long, long gap to catch up. India, China plus one or whatever. But I'm glad we're doing it. But to build redundancy to the China supply chains. But that's my LiquidMind topics. But nevertheless, the startup Mahakumbh issue of the honorable minister nudging startups and the ecosystem at large, saying, "Look, guys, you got to get out of this. I'm going to create jobs for the blue collared workers and deliver items faster." I view a lot of, say, the quick commerce regime and the services, to be honest, as a lazy customer problem. And it's a fact. Look, we all have kiranas quite literally next door in our tier 1 or tier 1.5 or tier 2 cities, India 1, if you will. The India one per se has very easy access to our kiranas as well. Maybe, yes, it solves the problem. We all have been ordering from these services as well. We would be lying if we said we didn't. But does it create a needle mover differentiator or something that can't be replaced and corpus of knowledge that you can actually then create and export for the world? Answer is no, because it's very fungible. It is very, very easily replaceable with some other low cost location, let's say in Vietnam or somewhere else. services in IT is a very similar ball game. If you
Correct.
don't even, for that matter, controversial topic, but even our GCCs, if for example we don't build local intellectual property, that also is just about leveraging a lot part of information or cost arbitrage, which was the game for a long time. But now it's become a question of how can you build those local centers of excellence, and they're here to stay,
Hmm.
right? So the honorable minister's comments had that view where he said, get out of this mindset of just trying to bring in operational efficiency or productivity and focus on new technologies and capabilities, whether it's in deep tech or whether it's in deploying patient capital for the VC ecosystem. It was a nudge for them. It was a nudge for the startup founders. That was his view. Now I'll take the opposite view, which is that of a founder, which is who I am. Um, the minister's comments also were, I would say, a little bit, tough on the ecosystem, because the ecosystem demanded that. It was a broken supply chain. Think back days when we didn't have Flipkart. Think back days when we didn't have the Amazons. Think back days when we didn't have, say, the phone pays or the UPI, if you will, on the central stack, right? So the entire DPI, direct public infrastructure, digitized public infrastructure, and the goods delivered through the DPI. Uh, Aadhaar is one example. You have your UPI as another example, and so on. And then came these companies. Some of them were my own co-founders, and they've gone on to do very well for themselves in these companies. And then, if you were to take all of these verticals, let's say mutual funds, Grow, Zerodha, etc., good examples who have come in and disrupted that game. I used to work with, say, other players like Geojit, etc. I just found that Grow and the others are a great product play, and thought by product people, Lalit Keshre, etc. All of these guys are my ex-colleagues and built very first good product first constructs. If you were to take a look at, say, PhonePe, Paytm, etc., leveraging the UPI stack and the digitized public infrastructure goods as well, think about what it was. I used to do a lot of customer discovery in Flipkart, Capillary, tail my account managers in Capillary B2B, and in Flipkart tail my field executives B2C to see karte kya hai customer. A lot of them used to have, we used to have, believe it or not, Malti, all of our delivery hubs used to collect truckloads of cash during Big Billion Day, other peak sale events, Big App Sales Day, and so on. And Flipkart really pioneered BBD, and the others followed suit just pre Diwali, right? So
Right.
Deepavali time. And the good news is that there was a big move away from, let us say, all of this cash collection, change, chutta nahi hai, khulla nahi hai, all this, to a point where you suddenly were able to do M2P, M2M, P2M, P2P, uh, P equal to peer to peer, basically P2P, and M is merchant.
Merchant.
And the ability to be able to execute transactions seamlessly in NRT, near real time. And it did it by creating this consortium of banks and that layer of DPI that people like, PhonePe or Paytm. So, can you build a better product than these guys? Maybe yes. Can you build a better distribution network than them? Heck no, because they've already cracked that space. So, my rejoinder to that assessment from the honorable minister was also this, right? That a lot of these guys have spent a lot of time in the trenches, much like how I used to spend my time in Flipkart and Capillary, and even giving very contrarian views to some of the management consulting big houses that would come in and advise FK, and I would have a different view because I used to have the customer view, that you can reduce your reliance on ability to interact with cash, reduce COD, cash on delivery, because people wouldn't trust the product quality. That is the reason they would even do COD in the first place. Now, a large part of it, if you can obviate to digitized, prepaid or postpaid at time of the, you figure that you got the product and still do a digital, because gone are the days when you send the point of sale machines to your customers doorstep, like I have seen myself when I've tailed them in Bombay, in Kandivali, Borivali, visiting my mother hubs, delivery hubs, hajar locations pan India. It's a headache for our field executives, for the delivery hubs, for us to reconcile, settle, move the fund management, BBD, the problem compounds 100x, 1000x perhaps. We ended up choking all airports the first time we launched BBD in 2014. So, gives you an idea. So, efficiency gain was the need of the hour back then. Is it still going to be the need of the hour now? Like I said, quick commerce, etc. Let's see where it goes. I am bullish on maybe the model, but it's not that it hasn't been tried before. Obviously, giving a promise window of, as we call it, right, in Flipkart, Amazon, it's promise date. and same day delivery, SDD, NDD, same day delivery, next day delivery. These guys now promise 10-minute deliveries. Of late, I haven't got any which are 10-minute deliveries, by the way, to be frank with you. They do take a lot longer. And I still attribute it as a lazy customer problem. What I mean is, you zoom out, a lot of them were in operational efficiency aspects that were the need of the hour back then a decade ago. May not necessarily be the use case now, where we have to focus on deep tech and ability to invest in core AI, ML, lest we fall behind. I'll give you an example. We are talking a lot about Bharat AI and all that, right? At best, we are talking about 20,000, 30,000 GPUs from, say, the US big houses like NVIDIA and some of the GPU makers that are dominating this space with a maximum market share, majority market share worldwide. And there are export restrictions. Now, imagine XAI alone to power Grok 3 perhaps uses more than 200,000 GPUs from NVIDIA H100 or even higher variants to power those. And they stitch that whole infra. Jensen Hong is on YouTube actually saying this, praising Elon Musk to say how they were able to execute it in less than 2 weeks. What would have taken other companies perhaps many years. What I mean is, compute, ability to invest in modern tech, deep tech, and we are still. The good news is India has not lost the game yet. Do I believe there is room for our Sarvam and homegrown models and some of the other Indic language models? Heck yes, I believe yes. And that's going to have to evolve over time. It's not just about Indic, it's really about having your sovereign AI. It's
Correct.
all about owning and being a pole position player in, say, in the analogy of Formula One, in also ensuring that you are at the front of the game, and not really lagging in new age quantum compute, etc. But are we there today? No. We probably we'll have to come from the back, and we'll have to beat the best at their game. But India has some of the best brains in the world. I don't see why we can't do it. We need the conviction and the courage of that conviction in ourselves.
Yeah, no, no, that's right. I mean, I think we need something more equivalent like what we did back with UPI, right? And we need to build those kind of modes with the new technology. And definitely we need the budget, the resources, the talent to come together, and the vision, I would say. Very
Yeah,
specific focus to say that this is what we need to do. Because I think locally, Naveen, if you look at it, I think you're right. A lot of focus today is just on that tier one, which is the India segment. There is still so much for Bharat 1 and Bharat 2. The study with Bloom Ventures had come out with, which talked about the three tiers of user
yeah,
this thing in India. So there is still a lot to do.
yeah.
So with this, Naveen, I would like to now switch gears into one of the most I would say probably searched word today on Google, maybe what is called as agentic AI and AI agents, right? Now, I know that the products that you are building, for example, at Liquid Minds, you are kind of heavily using AI agents. So, I would like you to first of all, just unpack that for our users. And the second thing I would like you to talk about is all the, like the big players, whether it is Salesforce, whether it is Microsoft, HubSpot, they are super bullish about it. So, I would like to also understand how do you see the real adoption of this in the B2B space?
AI agents are, how do you actually classify? Let's zoom out. What is an AI agent? An AI agent is something that basically, at a simplistic level, takes an instruction, carries forward, has all the details that it needs to execute on that instruction. It's much like if I were to tell my, say, kid to go to the neighborhood shop within the apartment complex, go pick up this loaf of bread, hand over this change to that shopkeeper there, pick up that item, come back straight, don't deviate, be very specific in that instruction. That's really at a moot what an AI agent does. It carries an instruction, goes deep, solves it end to end without prompting further. That's an AI agent, which is a depth capability. Agentic AI is more a series of AI agents talking to each other, which is completely autonomous in its very workflow. And it serves and fulfills the needs of maybe myriad instructions and also being able to take decisions on the fly, thanks to AI and machine learning that it obviously has ingrained within its very framework, and executes and gets the job done. What is a great example of that in a B2B scenario? Let's say in our own world, in say LiquidMind, we work with what? What's our mandate? Our mandate is we automate workflows for international business and trade using AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's really simple. All we do is, what does that mean? Workflows can mean documentation processing. Guess what? It's a $30 trillion industry, and it hasn't been reimagined in over many centuries. Forget about decades. This is a century-old problem. And people have done SNAK, they've looked at documentation in say PDF form, uploading to XYZ portals. India itself has some hajar portals. For every export promotion council they may have one. Director General of Foreign Trade in India may have a lot of documentation aspects. Banks deal with documentation that are largely digitized. IceGate, which is our customs at the port of shipping, has a portal, and so on. However, the reason it's still broken is because there is such myriad data fields. It needs an entire army in, say, the large enterprises we work with or the SMBs where the problem compounds. You will have all of this documentation, say, letter of credit, bill of lading, let's say, invoice, insurance, packing list, whatever, right? The Incoterms that they have to adhere to, international commercial terms, that the shipment is going to be governed by carriage insurance, freight, CIF, free on board FOB. These are all very, very popular ones because the liability of the goods till it's received sits on the importer. And that's the reason they're preferred. And there are many more Incoterms. I won't bore you with those details, but largely all of this is in documentation form, some digitized, some still handwritten, some perhaps even though digitized, requiring human intervention to be able to adhere to what they call as critical to quality parameters. If you don't adhere to these CTQs or critical to quality parameters, that item, let's say it's a letter of credit. What's a letter of credit? Here, what's the mood bane? The bane of society is whether it's Flipkart or whether it's export import, buyers don't trust sellers, sellers don't trust buyers. In the case we are talking about an international trade, the buyer is the importer, the seller is the exporter or the trader. Now, because trust has to be resolved, you bring in intermediaries. Now, who are these intermediaries? There will be banks that will say guarantee and say, okay, I know this exporter, they have been in XYZ business, they have this collateral, ये item manufacture करेंगे आपको पहुंच जाएगा. Importer will say, हाँ मेरे को confidence मिला. So it goes as a bank to bank interaction. That is what a letter of credit is. It's a legal document which says, which exchange between banks, but the exporter or the trader has to still fill it in and give it to them via perhaps, and obviously in the LC case, and in logistics case, perhaps they work through customs hold agents, CHAs, which take care of the entire shipment movement, the documentation movement, and so on. Now there is a room for a lot of error in all of these processes. Agar aapka export team, or if it is an SMB, God forbid, who doesn't even have the benefit or luxury of all of these export documentation teams, if they make an error, the document can get rejected. I'll give you an example. About less than a month ago, India took on this particular use case where it was in the news for all the wrong reasons. There was a huge mango consignment worth 10 crores or whereabouts from India to the United States. It was a mango shipment, and it reached the port of entry in US, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and I think Atlanta, Georgia. And the US shipment authorities, due to some confusion on one of the critical to quality parameters and one of the documentation aspects, it wasn't done right, so they said, and they discarded the entire shipment. So goods worth literally crores were discarded at port of entry because some silly documentation issue arose. In the enterprise context, we are seeing a lot of this noise being thrown up, and people need the help of technologies like AI to be able to eliminate or maybe at least serve as a co-pilot in the game, where somebody can come in, a technology like ours. We have a flagship product called Trade Veda. It solves for this. We have another where through retrieval augmented generation, you can speak to the Director General Foreign Trade, changing requirements. Then you have sensitive SCOMET करके और एक है, sensitive chemical organisms, engineering goods and technology. Basically, what that does is at the root level, it ensures that you're not exporting something you shouldn't be, and the DGFT lays out guidelines which is adhered to in cross the T dot the I's by your customs at port of departure. And if an item or let's say it's some nuclear technology, defense technology, which isn't supposed to be exported and some exporter is doing it, then obviously it will be classified as whatever is dual use or whatever, and that will get rejected. So suddenly, if you're a very legit, a clean, a good actor, exporter or trader, and suddenly your item is there is some changing regulation that comes in, how are you supposed to dream about it? So LiquidMind type companies, at least what we do as a capability, is to be able to go query all these portals and information sources, make that latest and greatest info available to them through at the push of a button, and then be able to at least help guide them with the nuances of, hey, by the way, this is suddenly what wasn't dual use or wasn't classified under SCOMET is suddenly now being classified as SCOMET. So you better be wary, otherwise you might get into trouble and it might not get. So technologies such as ours are helping a serve as co-pilot in export use cases like the ones I highlighted on CTQ, workflow, AI agents, agentic AI, connecting the dots, if you will, of having AI agents speak to each other, and hence end-to-end workflow with zero intervention, like full self-driving cars inside the enterprise, or documentation constructs and logistics constructs. Hope this
And
answers.
how do you, yeah, no, no, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you, in other use cases, like the other one which I say, how do you see the, like I think documentation automation with the tool that you're building, TradeVeda? I think that's a great use case. But what I want to kind of also go beyond that also is that largely when I'm hearing the use cases, let's say with agentic AI or building AI agents, it is still about solving for efficiency more, in the financial, marketing, or let's say more around any kind of customer success, customer support, operational use cases. Do you see that the agents have been able to penetrate, especially in the larger enterprise organizations, in any of their core capabilities, or the core workflows? Have they been able to penetrate and show benefits there?
Two questions there. One is, what is the application of agentic AI to real world enterprise use cases, and how does one measure success as a result?
Right.
I'll get to the first question. So basically, if you look at all the large players, I'll give an example. The best example, you yourself took it in your previous question, which was Salesforce. Coming to the first use case, Salesforce per se, what, let's take Salesforce, and we talk a lot of this in SkillAgents AI in our trainings where we give hands-on sessions. And trust me, what was a multi-month, multi-year problem in building, let's say, CRM workflows, ability to identify leads, connect to the light leads slash convert them to opportunities, solve for your hunting farming teams to be able to do the job right, solve for the farming teams to be able to do 30, 60, 90-day baby care routines, if you will, nurture those customers. Then figuring your agents have enough load, making sure that you're connecting with the product teams, technology teams within the enterprise and your business teams to be able to take requests within the CRM system, attending to queries, solving for turnaround times, adhering to 95th percentile, output metrics, a typical CRM system. What did Salesforce do? They came up about a year and a half ago, I think, with this concept called Agent Force. They already run their flagship
Correct.
conference forever, Dreamforce. But largely, they launched this in those conferences where they said Agent Force is going to take a very vertical view. Those are AI agents. You take a lead identification as an AI agent. You take an
Right.
opportunity identification as another AI agent. These two will speak to each other. Customer service. All of us have used chatbots on bank websites. Are you happy? I'm not. They always suck. So it is changing, but it's not there yet. To be frank, Malti, there's a lot of room for building because they all operate on rule-based constructs. If word equal to this cosine similarity or fuzzy match, then give this, or if option equal to this, do this. Any question that comes with it outside its thinking window, gone. Think तो करता ही नहीं है, reason तो दूर की बात है. So the question is, how on earth will you actually solve for a customer service verticalized AI agent? How will you build interaction touch points for, let us say, in this lead identification? What are the pain areas I saw in Salesforce in my implementation? Say my hunting team has 10 people. They have 500 leads that they could convert in a certain period of time. These guys have to take on and pull the request, or the manager assigns. What nonsense. The system should be able to do it. So that agent is likely solving that in the Salesforce use case with Agent Force. I'm quite sure that's probably what it's doing. Opportunity as well, right? How many of those look like red hot scoring parameters, leveraging with keywords and what the industry trends are, what is the industry the company is operating in, what you want, etc. And then being able to score those. That is opportunity and some sort of scoring. Then interaction touch points, adhering to TAT, adhering to making sure customer service requests aren't as junk. trust me, we have built entire just last Saturday, Malti, in our SkillAgents second iteration, we run fortnightly lightning sessions. We ran one where we showed and demonstrated model context protocol. We demonstrated a case of a customer service agent. In addition to many others in the MCP, fortnight ago, we also showed an example of a customer service agent. Now, in the typical Flipkart, Amazon, or in your real world use cases, where you want to return an item, there is a return policy for that category if it is eligible for returns. There is a window, replacement hoga, exchange hoga, refund ho sakta hai, whatever. So this policy with whatever is the item that is being bought or serviced, and this can apply equally to food delivery like Swiggy, Zomato, or whoever, or it could apply to all of our commerce players, whether it's quick commerce like Zepto, Blinkit, whoever, or the traditional e-commerce players like your Flipkart, Amazon, Meesho, etc. It could apply to anybody. If you were to have LLMs succinctly summarize and build that AI agent which is thinking and then picking the required info, given it is using a combination of your return policy through an MCP interaction with, say, your return layer for XYZ categories or some retrieval augmented generation policy document that they have, which keeps changing. By the way, like in the export example I gave you about changing regulations countrywide, that DGFT or some other source of info is sitting on, and it's pretty archaic. You basically then come down to a situation where you have that agent having suddenly the intelligence to be able to respond very intelligently to a user saying, is their item, let's say I ordered an item, and let's say it was supposed to reach me in 10 minutes, quick commerce, say Zepto, and it didn't. Now I want a refund. So it'll look up, it'll figure, has it been dispatched? If it has been dispatched, will it go look up the policy for that category? Say, oh, by the way, guess what? We'll give you a token of apology, we'll still accept your, or maybe we will give you a refund, whatever, right? So suddenly it becomes intelligent. Suffice to say, the Salesforce example is much like that if it is done well. They had something called Einstein, which was there, and of course, they also married it to Tableau, which they acquired, and then they also slapped Slack on top of it now. So that's kind of an end-to-end system that they try to create. But really, in the new world, Agent Force is going to have to look up these AI agents and running through an agentic workflow. That's one great example of AI agents and agentic working together in harmony. I'll give you an example of where um, how much of adoption do I see in the enterprise and what are their success metrics? The second part. I won't get into the Microsoft example. They're mostly all about co-pilots for their capabilities, whether it's Visual Studio Code. I use it day in, day out. I use Copilot for GitHubs. I use Copilot for my Visual Studio coding constructs, integrated development environment. It's incredibly helpful, code completion. I don't need peer review. You remember the days when we had peer review, pair programming and all of that.
Correct,
You
correct.
probably have that agent do that for you now with 40%.
It's a pretty decent. We
Yeah,
we actually use that for our training, for our
yeah,
AI
exactly,
training.
and it's pretty useful.
Correct.
So coding agents is mostly the realm that they talk about, but also they it doesn't mean to say that the research arms of all of these entities are sitting quiet. They're always looking at all the great prompts that are coming in, let's say OpenAI, and looking
Correct.
up what are the use cases that they can be applied to, and maybe then look at say the acquisition of Insurf by OpenAI, classic case, right, where they said coding agents is the future. Context window is very heavy for large sections of code, so many million lines of code, and suddenly you say token to jayenge. It is more like an addiction problem. You can't run your code without it, so you will force the user to pay. So as bad as that analogy is, it is an addiction problem. They're going to force you to pay for input token. That's a
That's the
it's
reality.
a recession proof. Look, I can't think of a more intelligent way people can charge. AI companies have really hit the sweet spot in that one approach. Now, coming to the second example, which is your part of your question, which is success metrics. It is changing, Malti. SaaS is dead. The way I see it, software as a service is dead the way we know it. I know it's a controversial statement. There are some brave people like me and Surojit who talk about it, the founder of Emma, who was my ex boss at Flipkart. He was our chief product officer there. He's from Google Shopping, Mountain View. He was the CPO at Coinbase and all that. So I can tell you that SaaS is dead for sure, simply because although it will be slow death, think about CRM. The demonstrations we gave in SkillAgents in a 1 hour. Look, there are entire companies built on HR automation. We were able to create a demo in 1 hour. I'm
Correct.
not saying we did it perfect, but come on, give me a break. If AI can solve this, in that company ought to be doing or imagining what they're thinking about. Similarly, CRM. There are many large players in CRM. I won't name them, but largely They're based on old school SaaS thinking, saying मैं तुम्हारे इतने स्टोर्स को दे दूंगा, इतने डिप्लॉयमेंट्स होंगे, पर सीट डिप्लॉयमेंट और पर कैस्टल डिप्लॉयमेंट इतना होगा, पर omni channel इंटरफेस इतना होगा. I will offer consulting for CRM. I will do this. I will do that. But CRM, for those of uh, I think it's a candidate ripe for disruption by something like AI, and Salesforce has really actually led it. Whether it
Correct.
is engagement management solutions or customer relationship management solutions, that's that. How do you measure success? We'll get to that. Like I said, SaaS is dead. So how are you going to charge? You're going to have to charge basis outcomes. Now, outcome ain't cheap because the input cost is damn high. Like I said, the good news is if you were to build a recession proof or a sort of help me position my monetization model in such a brilliant way, like all of these coding agent guys have done, like Cursor grew 9,900% in the last 2-3 years simply because they grew their ARR astronomically because you're going to run out of tokens. You're going to have to pay for it again. I'm going to have to resubscribe. If I have LLMs, they have only certain tokens that I can on any base plan or the mid tier plan. It's not like the third plan is infinite. वहाँ भी token limit है. So you're going to have to end up paying for more usage, and they want to coerce you to use more. The more you use, it's self-feeding flywheel. The more you use, the more you are training their model. ऐसे नहीं कि you have access to that data. They're becoming more intelligent at our cost. So suddenly, that self-fulfilling flywheel means they're not only monetizing their offerings, but they're also building a very great virtuous cycle, much like
Correct.
what all our two-way, three-way marketplaces like Flipkart, Amazon, Uber, Ola, Airbnb, etc., did in the world of products to avoid the cold start problem when they launched many decades ago. But the point is that same thing, which is really build that virtuous cycle and then figure what is going well. And then you try and see if you want to then either compete or partner. Next is, so like I said, position for outcomes. Cover your input cost. That's another key metric, L0, L1 metric, I would say. A derived metric would be how am I going to price my offering, which is
Hmm.
going to be looking up the cumulative cost per unit, bringing it to per unit basis, and then making sure I have a certain markup. Although it's cost plus, that's probably one way of doing it. Trust me, that's probably the only way in the AI world. Otherwise, the company will bleed very quickly because you can't forever be sitting on some subsidized credits, some Azure, AWS, or GCP building.
That's a great point to start with, though.
Yeah, it's a great way to start, no doubt. But वो लोग भी वही करते हैं. They give you certain credits, but you're going to exhaust your credits. Then what?
Exactly.
And they're
It's a
astronomically
trap.
small after that. So that's that. Next is how are you going to measure for the dimensional aspects, which was a big part of your question, which is metrics. How do you measure success in B2B, B2C, whatever? Mostly B2B. So you're going to have to measure basis. So many people are very finicky. They don't know, right? When we educate our B2B companies and customers, most times they come and say, मेरे को ROI measure करना है. अरे भाई, ROI in the traditional sense is what? मैं 1 रुपया डालूंगा, 10 रुपए आ गए, मेरा रिटर्न कितना है, and मेरा whatever है, profit कितना आया. Now, in the world of AI, this is going to change dramatically because you're going to suddenly have to dimensionalize it on customer service, customer touch points, merchant experience, customer experience, whatever, and accuracy metrics, F score, eval metrics, how confusion metrics, true positives versus false positives, and
Correct.
then look at saying how could I look for optimizing, say, time motion, which is obviously still the biggest needle mover in the world of AI. What was being done by a team of say 40 people, if you could try and offer it as a co-pilot and gradually bring that down to, let us say, by 90%, then is that a good metric? So people, reduction in cost, time motion, reduction in time, can you put that time to better use? That is one very obvious metric, L0/L1. Now the next could be looking at productivity improvements, leapfrogs, and if that what does that accuracy mean in outcome? Just to give them a visibility, like the mango example. If I had used something like a LiquidMind, could I have avoided this whole export shipment for that mango use case? If yes,
Hmm.
could I have saved my 10 crores?
Right.
That's very tangible. Suddenly people are waking up and they're like, wow. But that is a boon and a bane. Because if Liquid Mind AI engine works right, great. We all laugh to the bank. But what if it doesn't work right? Suddenly, do you have a limitations of liability clause? We should. In my opinion, as a product practitioner, we have to be smart about it. Because AI is being treated as a co-pilot. You have to have human vetting,
Yeah.
human feedback
Correct.
as well baked in into the loop. So that's
Right.
one way. These are the top metrics, Malti. That's how I would look at it. Customer experience, time motion, productivity gains, accuracy, what do you lose if you didn't have it, and what if you had deployed this, and what would the uh, cost have been, in terms of opportunity cost, if you will. And if something didn't go right, like in the mango example, it's a great use case, and had they used something like this, could you have saved it? And that's suddenly going to wake up everybody, and they're like, oh shit, I should have used this.
Yeah, yeah. So that clearly shows, Naveen, that the surface area with which we measure the application or the ROI of our AI products is kind of going to be far more complex and bigger than what we would do in a traditional software product, right? All right, that's been like a like a super master class in the last hour. I probably have one last question for you, Naveen. How do you envisage the role of a PM is going to be in 2030? Do you think we are going to be still called as product managers or something else?
No, we will be. I think so. I've thought about this a lot. Do we find other jobs, or do we continue staying in our bread and butter discipline and then slap AI on top of it to stay relevant? The more I think about it, the more I feel it's going to help make us more productive for sure. And that's today. I'm not even talking whatever 5 years down the line. What can we do better? Where does a day in the life of a typical PM go, right? Let's say, what is our day in the life? We will do some time, let's say X hours, some 10%, 20% doing primary research, secondary research, research via data, whatever. We will probably then be able to sit down and interact with our teams, running our daily rituals, stand up, scrum sessions, taking demos, whatever, retrospectives, etc. If we do it right. Most times, most orgs don't do it right. Then what would we do? We would spend a large part of our time trying and authoring specifications, talking to the business teams, talking to the leadership, convincing them on some new product idea, and driving alignment, consensus, whatever, decision making. Um, I think AI can play a great role there, a great role there. So we will be empowered, if you will. 2030, I envision the AI PM to be a lot more productive in some of the mundane stuff that we would do. Like I gave you the analogy earlier about what would take us weeks, months, back and forth with our bosses and leadership, and them never being in alignment with us in PPT writing, etc. If you give a great storyboard, get an approval, and boom, a Gamma app or a presentations AI or whoever, Canva, whoever, can give it to us in less than few hours,
Correct.
and that's an overstatement. And if you look at other productivity multipliers, PRD writing, you give enough detailed prompts, the damn thing knows more about it than even we do. And this is today. This
Correct.
is not even 2030. This is not some sci-fi stuff. This is today. It's magic, but it's today.
Correct.
Provided we get detailed enough and keep probing the AI to do the right thing. I'm sure you've done that in your exercises with your PMs as well. I know. It is a force multiplier. So think about it this way. Steve Jobs, many, many decades ago, when he launched Apple, called a computer as a bicycle for the mind. Much like that, I view our AI constructs and the ability to leverage and harness the power of AI for a PM or for an engineer. Actually, an engineering job isn't going away anytime soon. By the way, I'll be
Mhm.
honest about it. No matter, it could automate. Vibe coding could really help us product people accelerate and get more hands-on, and suddenly get into the holy grail of trying to get early demos, for which we had to literally beg, borrow, steal from our engineers earlier. Time नहीं मिलता था, break our head forever, and कभी फिर भी उनका इंजीनियर ने भी दे दिया आशीर्वाद, तो उसका मैनेजर नहीं देगा. सडनली बैंड बज गई हमारी, एंड the product won't see the light of the day, or it would get delayed by an inordinate amount and go through nonsensical prioritization exercises and finally land up in the dustbin. So point is, all of these are resolved. Like on Saturday, I gave a demo of a dashboard capability that I could whip together, of which I had taken almost about 3 months trying to convince my CXO leadership in Matchmove and with our partner in Stripe, trying to put together the ideal dashboard. And I never got the required engineering resources, because we felt there were higher priorities to work on. This is one example. What I mean is, there is a capability I was able to whip up and drive consensus and make it very actionable with insights in a
Right.
little less than 40 minutes that I spent on the dashboard creation, with real world, pulling it from Supabase, trying to manifest it in Manas AI, making sure that the dashboard is very readable, change parameters, work through multiple data sources, connect it to MCPs. I was able to do all this in less than an hour.
Correct.
Imagine I have to go beg, borrow, steal from my engineers for days, months, weeks, and perhaps still not see the light of the day. What I mean is, I think an AI PM's role will largely be amplified, if not diminished, because there has never been a greater need for people to take a business view, work backwards to be able to see how AI can be deployed to real production use cases.
Right.
That gap still remains. Somebody who translates a business requirement to engineers in a bite sized manner, that will not go away. Ability to help us get rid of some of our redundant workflows like authoring PRDs, where we have the, uh, I always say, right, you think best when you write. So you basically will help this copilot help you think better, force you to think deeper. Sometimes it may give you ideas which even we didn't know. So that's great for as a PM. And the typical day in the life of the PM is in consensus building basis, whatever product review sessions, working sessions, go to market sessions, or whatever, where we liaise with marketing and then we are able to even put together collateral, which is again a force multiplier in our world of AI PM. The way I see it is very much going to remain. If anything, it is going to be becoming very optimized. Don't worry, all fellow PMs out there, our jobs are not in trouble as far as I see it, nor are engineering jobs in trouble in the immediate term. And complex engineering jobs will never be in trouble because there are certain things that strong AI engineers, the depth to which and architecture to which they can do, AI systems will take, in my opinion, a few more years to get it right. Yeah, obviously, as they get trained on more of that data sets, I'm sure, and the code basis, I'm sure they will learn. But
Correct.
it's still going to have to, learn from so many different use cases, scenarios, and artifacts. AI PM role. What else does a PM do? GTM, mixing products. So you suddenly, by the way, I didn't talk much about this, but as an AI PM, there was a case earlier this year when, even though we are a startup, I took the bold decision to completely cut off a product that we had invested better part of 5 months trying to build an MVP and launch. And I realized the go-to-market and the product market fit was just not there. And I said, I'm going to put a bullet in the head of this product. This is just not flying. This customer segment I'm going after in the SMB space is just too painful, and we're not going to see traction even if we attract the early adopters, etc. Then there isn't that critical mass, that it won't achieve that escape velocity. um, and on the other hand, in trade veda we are seeing some incredible promise. Now whether it takes off or not, we only time will tell. But the truth is, even ability to take strong calls like mixing products, which is a great call, by the way. I have got rewarded in my past life as a strong product manager simply because I was able to stand up, take bold calls, and say we should nix this feature, nix this product, kill a sprint, restart a sprint. All engineers were mighty pissed, but when I rationalized with them, they loved it. So leadership loves it even more because you're putting your energy into the few things that matter, saying
Correct.
no to the 100 that don't, and that's prioritization at the end of the day for all strong PMs. So we add value as filters, not funnels. So that's going to enhance the productivity game for us PMs again in that perspective. It's going to equip us with knowledge. We don't need to go look up extensive market research, Gartner, Forrester, download those reports. There is a saying that even consulting companies are under threat from AI, with deep research capabilities that many of them offer today, and that's pretty strong, and it'll only get stronger over time. So the future couldn't be brighter for PMs as it is. I'm sure it'll be equally bright for engineers, in my
Yeah, yeah.
purest
I
sense.
think as you said, I think velocity is something we are already seeing. This is kind of gone like 2x, 3x, and in the years to come, I think it is just going to get better optimized.
Yeah.
But yeah, very very well put through, Naveen. I really loved the breadth and the depth that you covered, kind of across use cases, across various technologies, and here wishing you all the very very best with
Thank you,
Trade
Mark.
Veda. Yeah,
Thank
and
you so much.
continue to create your magic by creating more products and giving it back to the community with the skill agent.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for hosting me.
Hello everyone, I'm sure you all thoroughly enjoyed this episode as much as I and Naveen did while shooting it. So don't forget to click on that subscribe button, click on that bell notification so that you know next time when I'm coming up with a new episode. HSB integrates timeless leadership principles with a cutting edge curriculum to give graduates an edge in the market. Through partnerships with companies and academic institutions within India and abroad, HSB graduates have boundless opportunities worldwide.